Bonjour my lovelies, welcome to my channel. My name is Adrielle and I am an American who lives in Paris, and today we're talking about what happens if you get sick while visiting France. But before we get into it, if you want to stay in the know on all things Paris, please hit the subscribe button and make sure you tap that notification bell so you can get notified of all new videos in the future. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much, and if you're a new subscriber, welcome, we're happy to have you. All right, let's get into it. As I said, we are going to be talking about what happens if you get sick in France. And I'll talk first about what happens if you get little sick, like you catch a cold, and what happens if you get big sick, like you need to go to the hospital. Alright? So first and foremost, what happens if you get little sick, like you catch a cold, get food poisoning, that sort of thing? Well, first and foremost, the most important thing to know is that the word for cold in French is rhume. So you're going to want to know this if you happen to go into a pharmacy. The word for sick in French is malade, and you'll also want to know that word if you go into a pharmacy, because even if you can't say every word, if you can say malade and then you can point to your stomach or you can do a hand motion like this, people are going to be able to figure out kind of what's happening for it to you. So one thing you need to know about, I say, French culture in general is that there is kind of like one place for everything. So if you need, for example, need to go buy a book, you go to the bookstore. If you want to buy a CD, you go to the CD store. Are there still CDs? I don't know. I may have just dated myself. But the point is that there's kind of one store for each and everything. So it's kind of the same with medicine. I feel like in the US, you can buy one medicine like Pepto-Bismol and it takes care of like 15 different things. That's not really true here in France. There's kind of like one medicine for kind of each sort of different type of thing, and each of them do sort of different types of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the medicines that you might want to get if you find yourself catching, for example, a cold in France, dealing with stomach issues, that sort of thing. So let me show you. First item I'm going to talk about are strepsils. Strepsils are what we use if you have, let's say, a sore throat or a cough. You can find these in any pharmacy. They come in lots of different flavors. I personally like the little miel citron, that means honey, lemon honey. So I really like this flavor personally, but they also come in strawberry. And you can find these really simply at the pharmacy. They're great for sore throat, itchy throat, you know, even frankly, if you have a cough, it can kind of soothe that itchiness that might be causing the cough. Now, another thing that's important to know is if you find yourself with a headache, you're having pain, one thing that we often use is Doliprane. Doliprane is basically going to be your equivalent to Tylenol. It is an equivalent to Tylenol. It's literally the exact same thing. You can pop one of these babies. I wouldn't say to take two, because two is almost the equivalent of like one Tylenol, but these are the 500 milligram, and you just pop one of these babies and take this if you're feeling like a headache or any sort of pain or anything like that. It's really going to help you kind of with those symptoms and making you feel good. And again, this is something you can easily find in any sort of pharmacy. They even have some that like will dissolve on your tongue. So yeah. Now let's say you're dealing with sunburns, rashes, muscle ache, that sort of thing, you get a cut. Let's talk about what you would use. So first and foremost, you have probably seen this a lot on social media, it is Biafine. Despite what you're seeing on social media, you don't really use it on your face. It's for burns and it is for rashes. So you use this, for example, if you got a sunburn, yes, then you'd apply a little bit on your face, but a little bit. Not a lot, like a little bit. You don't need a ton of Biafine. I would never suggest putting like a ton of Biafine on your face. So Biafine, though, is really great if you find yourself in a situation where you have a rash, a sunburn, or even a burn. This is what you're going to want to use. It's going to make it feel so much better. It's going to heal it. I love me some Biafine. When I was in the US and I actually got a rash, all I kept thinking was, I can't wait to get home to get some Biafine. So yeah, Biafine, this is the jam if you're dealing with that sort of stuff. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you have a cut, you're going to want to use the Sisa cream. We call it Cisaplast. A lot of times you'll actually see like that's a formal name for it is Cisaplast, but this is the same thing. It's like the same ingredients, and basically it's what you use if you have a cut or something like that and you want it to heal, and you just put this on your cut every single day and then put a band-aid on it. Band-aids are called pansements. They are called pansements in French. They are not called Band-Aids. And a lot of times you'll actually find what the pharmacist will do is he'll sell you gauze in like this packet, like these little square packets of gauze, and then he'll sell you tape. And you're supposed to literally like put the gauze on and then wrap the tape around. And that's actually what we use a lot of times instead of just Band-Aids. So just so you know, if you find the pharmacist who's like sells you this, he's probably also going to sell you some gauze and some tape. That's actually a lot of times what we use instead of Band-Aids, okay? Last but not least, if you're dealing with kind of soreness, like muscle aches, that sort of thing. Also, if you have like a bruise or something, you can use Arni gel. So I actually just got this. This was recommended to me by a guy who was actually like taking my blood at like a lab. He was taking my blood, and I was telling him about how they had drawn my blood like a few days before. My arm still really hurt, and he was like, "This is what you need. Go get this. It's really nice, really simple cream. You just rub it on the area where you're dealing with the pain or the soreness or whatnot, and it's perfect for that, and it will really kind of help heal it up nicely." Now, what if you're dealing with just say like a cold, and you're like, I need some cold medicine. The thing in France is there isn't a lot of cold medicine. It's very much a culture where they believe in kind of giving you like vitamins. So you're not going to find a lot of cold medicine, but there are some medicines that sometimes you'll see that I at least have heard of, and they'll generally have rheum, the word for cold, after it. So maybe you might see Advil, rheum. So that's like essentially Advil cold, right? Advil cold and flu. If you're dealing with like an upset stomach, or you're looking for something that's kind of similar to Pepto-Bismol, there are a couple different products that you can get depending specifically upon what it is you're dealing with. So what I would actually recommend for those situations is going to the pharmacy and explaining to the pharmacist what is happening. One of those products is called Rene. That might be something that you might get. It's generally for like heartburn. Another product that helps kind of with tummy rumbling is called Gaspar, and that might be something that you might get, but the pharmacist will really be able to recommend something to you that will suit your needs if you really need like some sort of medication like that. And if the pharmacist is trying to kind of push you on vitamins, be like, no, 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 no. I need something different than vitamins here. One thing to note about pharmacists here in France is pharmacists are literally like one levels down from doctors. Like they can legit like diagnose your issues and give you medicine for it. So if you go into a pharmacy, really speak to the pharmacist like you are talking to a doctor, because they really are like one level beneath a doctor. Like people have like full discussions of medical history with their pharmacist, and their pharmacist can, you know, recommend medication that they take. So that is something that you'll want to do. A lot of products, just so you know, are actually not available over the counter, in the sense of, you know, you just walk into the store and you pick it up and you grab it. So Doliprane is, Biafine is, that sort of thing. But other things you might have to actually, like if you want Advil, like cold and flu, for example, that's going to be behind the pharmacist. Like you're going to have to go and you're going to have to talk to the pharmacist, and you're going to have to ask them for that. You're going to have to explain what is going on. So a lot of these things that I'm naming that are, you know, specifically meant to treat, you know, like acid reflux or indigestion or something like that, something more than just like the cough drops or, you know, the Neosporin type products, you're really going to have to actually talk to the pharmacist to get these things. That's why it's important to be able to kind of know some of these words, rheum, malade, so that you can then like act it out with your hands if you don't know entirely what the right words are in French. And that's okay. Some of the pharmacists sometimes will speak English, but generally, like, you can, with hand signals, you can actually get quite far in this country. All right, let's talk about what happens if you get big sick in France. Essentially meaning you need to go to the hospital. So some of you may have seen on my Instagram stories, I talked about how I basically fainted kind of at the entryway to a hospital. I was going to pick up my boyfriend after he had a procedure done, and he needed someone to pick him up. When I got there, I wasn't feeling well. I had just climbed these like ridiculous stairs. And I was frankly also probably dehydrated, and I was carrying a bunch of stuff, and I had on these knee-high boots. I was not like appropriately dressed for what was happening, and I fainted. Like collapsed kind of like right there at the security desk for the hospital, at the security entrance. And what they did was the security guard actually caught me as I was falling and kind of put me in a chair, and I didn't really lose consciousness. I was just like so dizzy and disoriented and whatnot. So then they took me to the security guy called down to the emergency room department. The the emergency people, like the EMTs, came out, and they actually took me to the ER, and I went to the ER. I have to tell you, the ER process, very, very similar, you know, to what you do in the US. So basically what happened is, you know, they rolled me down in a wheelchair down to the, you know, entryway of the ER. They took me up to the ER desk. You know, the ER desk asks for your identification, and they're going to ask for your insurance card. The thing is they're not asking for your US insurance card, they're asking for your French insurance card, so your French carte vitale. You are not going to have one of those unless you're a resident of France, so you don't need to worry about that. Like, providing your US insurance is not going to work, so that's not going to help you. If you have travel insurance, that's again something that's not really going to help you. You'll probably be reimbursed for that, but we'll talk about the cost of everything kind of at the end. So essentially what happened is they rolled in, they asked me for my ID, my carte vitale, I gave them all of that, and then they shortly thereafter took me kind of back into the emergency room area where a nurse asked for all of my information, like my medical history, asked me the standard questions. Do you drink? Do you smoke? You know, do you do drugs? Etc., etc. And I answered all of those, and then they started doing some tests on me. So one thing I will tell you about the French healthcare system that is very shocking and jarring for us as an American is what I like to say, the gratuitous nudity. So, for example, there was one nurse sitting in there, a male, and he was asking me all of these questions, and he's asking me these questions sitting behind a computer, you know, typing in my responses like they do in the US, right? Then the second female nurse was there, and she was like, okay, take off your shirt so that they wanted to run a heart test on me, so they needed to put all these patches over me so they could do it. So she goes, take off your shirt and just get undressed from you know, your waist up. And I was just like, can I get a robe? Can I get some privacy? And her response was, are you a prude? Like, vous êtes pudique? And I was like, oui. I said, yes. In America, I'm not going to be asked to, you know, strip from the waist up in front of this male nurse while he's typing in stuff, and in front of you. Like I don't want to just be sitting here like completely naked, like half naked, like having this conversation with this man about my medical history. I would like either a little bit of privacy or a robe or something. So the woman kind of was like, made kind of a fuss about it, but I wasn't giving. Don't give. If you don't feel comfortable, just don't. So I kind of didn't give. So finally she kind of turned me towards the wall so that I wasn't facing, at least I wasn't like facing the guy, at which point I like took my shirt off and my bra off, but I happened to have a sweater, and I held the sweater kind of closed like this, and she was really annoyed, but I didn't care because that's what made me feel comfortable, and so that's what I was doing. So she did all of that, and then afterwards she handed me a robe. So she had a robe the whole time, you know? This is what I mean about being like very, very like forceful if you don't feel comfortable with something. So that is what I mean with like the French system, gratuitous nudity. And the nurse, he was like, you know, we're not here to judge you. We don't care. We're professionals, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all of those things are lovely. I don't care. There's no need for me to be facing you having a discussion without a shirt on. Like, it's unnecessary. So, that's like a very French thing where they're just like, oh, whatever, but you don't have to be okay with it. And if you're not okay with it, say it. Like, demand a robe, demand, you know, a piece of paper to cover yourself, like demand those things. Just because they are like used to walking around naked all the time doesn't mean you have to be comfortable with that. So yeah, so there's that. After they took my history and she did those tests, they kind of rolled me into this little waiting area, and I waited there with my little robe that was covering me. And then they rolled me into a different room. And at that point, once they rolled me into the different room, I like put like my shirt back on, and like the doctor walked in and she was like, yeah, you can put your shirt back on and your bra and everything. And I was like, great, thanks. So I did all of that. And then she asked me a bunch of questions about, you know, what happened, what caused it, etc. You know, did the standard things that, you know, happens in the emergency room, right? Tap your knees, look in your eyes, look in your throat, all of that stuff. So everything about it was very, very normal and was very, very similar to a US experience. There really wasn't much difference between a US experience. And the thing is, the hospital was actually, like, the ER was quite busy. So, I mean, it took them a while to get through, like, they ran a bunch of, like, they did a bunch of blood work and everything. So it just took a while for me to get back everything. I think I was there for about 3.5 hours and then I was able to leave. But I was in a nice room, it was comfortable, like, there's just not much more to say about it than that. Now, as far as the price goes, so that night when I got home, I was asking my boyfriend, you know, oh my gosh, do you think that it's going to be, you know, like 1,000 euros? Like, how much do you think it's going to be? And he was like, oh no, with your social security card, it's, you know, max probably going to be 40 euros. 40 euros. Let me convert 40 euros for you. 40 euros is probably about what, like $42, $43 maximum. So literally, have you ever gone to the ER and paid $43? Right? Like, literally, that is insane. So that's what he told me it's going to cost with my social security card. And then with my private health insurance that I actually also pay for, because everyone tends to, you know, you can just rely solely on social security, or you can also have a private health insurance. And that private health insurance covers everything kind of above what your government insurance covers. So with, like, the private health insurance, what it covers above that is basically, like, the rest. Now, obviously, you're not going to have, you know, French health insurance, so you're going to pay, like, that full amount, but they're not going to ask for it then. They're going to send you the bill later, right? Like, they're going to mail it to you in the mail and you have to pay it. The one thing to note about French hospital systems, this is not like a US hospital system where you call them up and you start, like, trying to negotiate the bill, or you say, like, oh, I can't afford to pay it. Like, that doesn't exist in France. You got to pay that bill. So get a loan, do whatever you got to do. But your bill is probably going to be, what, $100, and you probably have some sort of health insurance or emergency insurance even on your credit card that you use to book the trip. So, you know, when it all comes down to it, what, you're probably going to pay $50. Just so you know, if something really happens, like something huge, let's say, like, you have to have, like, your appendix out, right? Even still, that bill, it's highly unlikely you would have a hospital bill over 1,000 euros. Like, it's just like, I literally can't even, like, actually, I literally don't, like, I think you'd have to have, like, open heart surgery to have, like, a hospital bill that's, like, that high. It would just have to be, like, you'd have to, I mean, open heart surgery is that's an exaggeration, right? But, like, what I'm trying to say is essentially that it takes a lot of effort to get your hospital bill to 500 euros, 1,000 euros, right? Like, that's like, you've been checked in and you're there. And even still, it's not like the US where, you know, after 5 days in the hospital, it's cost you like $50,000 or $60,000. You know, after 5 days in the hospital, it may have cost you $1,500, right? So it's really about just recognizing that the cost here is just astronomically less than what you're paying in the US, but the quality isn't less. Like, the quality of the care you're getting if you get hospitalized is not going to be less just because the price is going to be less. And I think that's something that's been very conditioned in our minds as Americans, is that because we're not paying a lot for our healthcare, it can't possibly be good. But I can tell you, as someone who lives here and who's, you know, now kind of getting very much involved in the system, whose partner is very much in, you know, the French health system, has to have procedures, etc. You know, that it's just like, just as good. It's just as nice. So that's just something to note. And last thing I really want to say also about costs is, if you find yourself in a position where they prescribe you a prescription and you need to go to the pharmacy to get that prescription filled, they're going to give you that piece of paper. This is a culture where you own your medical records. So for example, in the US, your medical records are yours, but if you want them, you have to pay the hospital to like send them to you. You get what I mean? In France, however, they give you your records when you leave the hospital. So like, for example, I had to have, you know, a test done today as part of like kind of figuring out what happened to me, that they prescribed after I came out of the ER. They like handed me like the scans, right? Like I got the scans and they put everything in a nice little folder and they like give it to you and you leave. So if you find yourself in a situation where you do go to the hospital and you have to get prescriptions and they kind of want you to do follow-up tests, they're gonna write all those out on sheets of paper and they're going to like make you a nice little folder and they're gonna give it to you, okay? And then you're going to take it and you can ask them to like print out the records. They're gonna print out like the record of your visit, like from that, like, and include it in there so you know exactly kind of what you need to take to the pharmacist. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you need a prescription, the emergency room has prescribed something for you, what you do is you just take your little folder with all your little papers, walk into the pharmacist, and hand them that paper that they gave you. You can also, if you want, show them the paper as to what happened to you in the emergency room so that the pharmacist will have a little bit more information if they think that you need something else like vitamins or something else, anything supplementary, they'll be able to kind of talk to you and share that with you. Just want to note that it can be very, very scary to get sick in another country. There is a language barrier. You don't understand like what it's going to be like, how is it going to cost, etc. Just know that it's going to be okay. I really cannot stress enough to you that the French system in particularly is quite good. And it's not different from the US system in terms of quality. I haven't found that. I have not found there to be this huge difference between quality and what I get in healthcare in the US versus what I get in France. In fact, in France, I feel much more freedom to have lots of different doctors and frankly to try out doctors because I'm not worried about the cost of it. So I go to a doctor, it's going to cost me 25 euros and, you know, 20 of that is going to be reimbursed by the government, right? So I don't worry about going to see the doctor and I'm able to experiment and find doctors that I really like who kind of suit my needs. And that's kind of one of the great things about this system. So don't be afraid. The cost is substantially less, yet the quality of the healthcare is still the same. It's still on par. So your prescriptions are going to be less, your bills are going to be less if you end up in the hospital. It's just going to be less, but yet it's still the equal quality. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments, if there's anything that I can help you with. And remember to hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified of when new videos get posted. Thank you so much for watching.